everyone. It is part 5 of Mandala Unplugged. Welcome. We have all been working so hard on our mandalas, so stick around at the end of this tutorial to see a progression of everybody's individual mandalas. They are all so beautiful in their own way. So the last couple weeks we've been doing some pretty labor-intensive and intricate work. So this week we're going to take it a little bit easier and work just some embroidered details in the middle of the mandala before we go out to the outer part of the mandala next week. So if you're feeling a little bit behind, this is a great week for you to catch up. Not that there's anything wrong with being behind. I mean, some people are just getting started. We have busy lives, so don't feel like it's a race. Go at your own pace, as always. These videos will always be here, and the Facebook group will always remain. So, and I'll always be here to answer questions. So our project will go till just the very beginning of March. The first Sunday in March will be the last video on this project, but I will still be here to help you through, even if your mandala takes you a little bit past that. So with that, grab your threads, flosses, yarns, beads, and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create sort of a little bridge coming from about 1/4 of an inch down from the points of this applique, meeting right here in the center. So I'm using the same thread that I did my Oya in, which is thread B, and we're going to put a little bead in there, and so for that one we're going to use bead E if you're looking at your materials list, or of course use whatever you want to. So about 1/4 of an inch down. See my little needle poking up there? Work a lazy daisy. So if you remember what that is, you're going right down in that same hole, and then this lazy daisy will angle up. You're exiting your needle out of the center between the bud, the two buds, you know, the ribbon bud and your folded fabric bud. Make sure that your yarn is behind the needle. And exit out about 1/4 of an inch down, and just kind of making sure that it's about even with where this is coming out of, because we want that sort of arc there, okay? And work a lazy daisy here, coming right up to this point, just right alongside it, almost in that same hole. Make sure that your yarn is under your needle before you pull that through. And then right here at this point, pop on a bead. I'm using bead E. Of course, you could use any one you want to. And then just go right down. My needle is on the inside of that last lazy daisy, so sort of in that same hole. There we go. So just work that all the way around. It is amazing how one little tiny piece of thread and one little bead and not that much effort makes such a difference. So what you're looking at here is this line, and when you kind of get away and stare at it, that adds quite a bit of visual texture. So the next thing what we're going to do is these little guys here, which I think add so much. We're going to put one in every little pocket of this space here between the applique and your crochet leaf. So this is with threads E and F, and these are embroidery flosses, so remember that we're just using 2 threads at a time. So they come in 6. Remember to split your threads. And ultimately we want the top of that to come, you know, sort of straight diagonal right from here to here. So be mindful of your placement here, and whatever you do the first time, just sort of try to mimic that. So I'm going to come out, I suppose, I ultimately want the top of my little leaf to be here. So I'm going to come about halfway between my starting point, which is right here, and ultimately where I want. So if this is 1/2 an inch, I'm coming up at 1/4 of an inch right here. And I'm going down And then just picking up the batting and the backing right here. And then if you remember this stitch, this is the fishbone stitch. Insert your needle right underneath where that is, the base of that is where you came out of. And angle it, of course we're trying to angle it right down into the V here. So just sort of keep everything mindful and in line. And then exit out of the other side at sort of the same point that that's coming out of. So right alongside that. See that? Always going down into the spine and out the top of the next, alongside that next leaf. All right, so by the time I do this, that's 2. And 3. So, and we'll do that darker color underneath here like we did before. But from here, once you have your third one down, you can just go right straight out, not working through the back, just through the batting in the top. And that's about center, maybe a little lower, because I want that leaf to come out here. Here, I'll do another one. So where this is sort of 1/2 inch, I suppose. This will look the same. It'll always be just a little bit different. I mean, I have variations between, you know, how far this has come down, how much space is in between here. So just tie it up as best you can. It'll look great. Okay, so again, down into the spine always, and those beads you can just kind of move them over. They'll lay on top of these leaves, which is fine. Right at the base and up again. Down into the base. And then make it, you know, be mindful of your leaf shape. So you don't want to come up as far. You want to come up right alongside that, but not as far as the top. All right, that's 2. And 3. And you're going to do that all the way around. And then we'll go to the darker color. And then continuing on with the dark, if you remember, we're not going to start in the center stem. We're going to start on one of the sides here. So right here. You can see I'm coming up just alongside of that last little stem, and work still the same down into the center, coming up just along and just below that line there, and you can work 2 or 3, whatever you can fit in yours. I'm going to work 3. So that's 1 on each side, going down into the V, and just scooch those little beads out of the way and work underneath them. That's okay. 2, and you can just kind of almost pull that yarn under the beads. And then 3. And just down into that V and come up right here. You see that? And then you can work the next one. Okay, so once you have those done, they kind of look like little wings, right? They're super sweet. If you find that you don't have enough space, or you're not loving, you know, maybe putting something in here, maybe your applique unit's got a little closer, That's okay. You can do these anywhere or not at all if you're finding you really don't need anything in that space. You know, there's a space in here, yours might be bigger, you might do those leaves coming right out of here, or, you know, we are going to do something right here, but you could do something up along the side. The next thing that I want to do is something that I think just makes such a big impact. So try to use a thread that is contrasting to your background. So I'm using thread A here, which is a size 5 pearl cotton, and I'm using the same thread that I used for the center here. And what we're going to do now is called a pistol stitch, and basically it's just a French knot with on a stem. So what I'm doing is I'm coming sort of behind this leaf, not all the way down into the V, but just sort of behind, you know, in between the leaf that we just did and these beads here. Sort of hold your thread up and away from the work and towards you. Put your needle underneath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the secret to holding a French knot on the top of your work, I know this gives people some trouble. You're going to take that yarn that's in your hand and swing it under the needle, and then just put that needle down maybe a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch away from your work. Hold that yarn in place and then grab this from the other side and just pull real slow. And then you'll have this great little French knot on top of that thread. And if the thread's loose, that's okay. You kind of want them sort of curly in there. It's sort of sweet. It's a cool look. And then just throw, I'm going to put 3 in each one, but if you're finding you're not really having a lot of room, you can put 2. It doesn't matter, just obviously pick away and stay consistent. So I'm going to come back down here again, maybe just above. Doesn't have to be in the V, it can be above. And now I'm just looking at it before I do anything. I'm thinking maybe I want it to land, you know, sort of either up here or down here, just so that it's not, you know, we're not trying to make them the same. We're trying to just make little sprays come out. So again, hold your yarn up away from your work. I've got some room in here and towards you. Slide your needle under. 1, 2, 3. And before we did 4, so maybe we want to even vary the size of the knot. So this time I'll do 3. Take that thread under the needle, and then just insert the needle wherever you want that French knot to land. Make sure that when you're pulling this through, you're holding that yarn tight against the work. And it'll just knot for you. Okay, and I think since I'm doing a third one, maybe I want it to come up here. So in that case, what I would do is push the needle between those two. And it's okay if these stems are crossing over each other too. That adds a little bit of interest. All right, and again, 1, 2, 3, 4. This yarn goes under the needle. Holding your yarn in place, your thread in place, pull tight. So do that in every crevice all the way around. And if in your piece you're finding that you've got a lot of extra material in here, take advantage of that and sort of move it around and manipulate it so that your knots land in between those sort of puffs of fabric. That's really pretty. So go ahead and do that all the way around, and you can't believe the impact. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to say about these is it takes about 3 yards worth of yarn or thread to do this, because the French knots take quite a bit, and then of course we're putting a stem on them. So I just about ran out. So those of you who are looking at the materials list or have a kit, right here you can tell I did one little short guy because I did just enough. So if you don't have, you know, from doing your centers, 3 yards of this yarn left over, then use G. But it does depend on, you know, how much you used here and how much you cut, you know, whether you saved your extra from the center or not. So totally up to you. The other thing you could do is work like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 in each one and then do a different color, like maybe use G, which is interesting because it's a smaller thread, to do the third one. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You might have something at home, but I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. You're going to need about 3 yards worth of thread to be able to do 3 of these in all 8 of the spaces. So, which is actually 16 because it's 2 on each side. So our next step is we're going to do a little ribbon V in the point of the Oya. So what we did down here, we're going to mimic right up here. So what that looks like, you know, you're going to thread your ribbon and then just come up right in the V, right in the point. And then remember, if you don't have the ribbon that you can pierce with the needle, then just go either on the side of it or on, you know, right into the fabric. Don't try to do the ribbon stitch because you will have a very frustrating time. Make sure you have silk ribbon specifically for ribbon embroidery. And then remember, when you're coming out, slowly, slowly, slowly. And pull just until that is a point and you've got a little roll in there. Okay, leave that open. We're going to do some lazy daisy stitching and put a bead right in here. So we want to keep this pretty evenly spread. And then with the ribbon, we're getting to the point now where we really don't want to travel from, let's finish this out. We don't want to travel from here all the way under to here. That's going to take too much ribbon. So what you're going to do is just on the back, just sort of knot it. And then maybe go 1/2 inch up just to bury the ribbon in the back. Make sure you're not coming through on the front. Clip it. Re-knot it. And then just continue along and do this in all 8 beads. In the space between the ribbon that you just did and the point of this applique, what we're going to do is work. This is with thread G, which is an 8, size 8, pearl cotton. And we're going to work another one of these lazy daisy floral swags. Come up at the point of your applique, go back down at the point, and come up along your stitching, maybe a 1/4 inch away from the V, because we're going to put a bead in there, so we don't want to get too close in that V. We want to leave space for our little bead. And rather than put a bead on now, what we're going to do is go finish out the lazy daisy. So we're going to insert the needle on the other side of where the loop is, and then just take a tiny little bite of fabric, because we're going to come right back up at the top. Put on a flat, put on an F, and then remember to secure that size F bead. We're not going to go through that again. We're just going to go down into the flat bead only. And that'll turn that size 8 F bead on its side. And then you can exit out the tip. And then just pull real slow so we don't get all caught up and tangled up. So that flat bead should kind of sit, almost looks like a little flower bud inside this ribbon V. And then work right alongside it, but shorter. Another lazy daisy. Sorry, I'm at such an awkward angle. Here we go. And then down into the point again. And then work another little lazy daisy right on its side. So it's next to it, but shorter. Then come back down into the V, but on the other side of it. Like so. Matching the same height as the one to the left. And then work a smaller one matching this outer one here. So you sort of have like a little spray, little flower bud happening. So again, it's too far away from here to bury the threads. It's just easier to just knot it, bury it, and then put another knot in the end and then just work each tip separately. Okay, and then just to give it a little something extra, a little bit extra pizzazz in there, take your sparkly thread, which is thread D, and then just come up in each, you can even just start on the right and go all the way around. Come up at the base of each lazy daisy and just fill it in with one stitch of thread. And it doesn't matter if you start at the top or the bottom. Like here it's easier just to go in to the top of that lazy daisy. Pull real slow. This sparkly stuff will give you some trouble. Down, then back into the base. Up. This kind of helps keep those little lazy daisies in place too. Down into the top of the next one. Down into the bottom. And then right down there at the base. And that sort of finishes out this applique piece and really makes such an impact when you're looking at the thing as a whole, where, you know, this goes all the way up to that base of that Oya. Okay, so now that the little tippy tops are done, it's so pretty, the last thing that we want to do is maybe put some definition in these leaves. Now, if you don't want to, that's totally fine. These leaves have enough texture, especially if you knit them. You can, you know, do something totally different. I know some of you have already even put beads on them, so this is totally up to you. This is what I'm going to do. I can't get away from this lazy daisy stitch, so that's how I'm going to work these leaves. I just love that little stitch. Oh, and incidentally, I wanted to say, this ribbon A that you've done, don't panic if you're out, because we're done with ribbon A. So that was the last thing we're going to do with that ribbon. So if you're following along with me, just come up right here at the base of the leaf and work a long lazy daisy. So you can see our little lace holes here. I'm just going to work one lazy daisy stitch. So I'm like in that bar, and coming out that last hole. And then before, just kind of bury that stitch inside the lace part that you've done. And I'm using the beads that I marked for eye, so you'll need 64 of them because we're doing 8 beads per leaf. And this is embroidery thread C, which is a size 5 pearl cotton. So put that bead on just for a little bit of sparkle. Make sure that you're putting your needle just on the other side of the loop. And then let's just work up the side just because that's easier when we're holding it. So I'm on this side of the stem, coming up in that hole, in that first lace leaf hole. Slowly pull. And my beads are clear, so I'm going to get a little bit of sparkle, but not a lot of contrast, which is fine. The thread is pretty contrasty. Go into the hole, into where you're coming out of, and then again the last hole. Making sure your yarn is under, so we're kind of touching that oya now. Put on your bead. And then again, make sure you're working over that stitch. Then just come out the next hole. So I'm leaving the center seam of that leaf alone, and that'll kind of pop up, and I think that'll look sort of cool. So I'm not even going to come down, but you certainly could. I mean, you can add a stem if you want to, absolutely. All right, again, so I'm down here in the same hole, skipping those 2 bars and coming up in that last hole. Or no, of course, if you haven't knitted your leaf, just stay even, stay consistent. Do as many of these as you want to. Over the loop. And this is just a little guy, so we're just gonna have a little lazy daisy up here. And skipping 1 bar. Do you see that? On a bead. Okay, and then when you work on the other side, just make sure that every time you start the needle, it's directly across from the base of its neighbor. And my bead on this side is touching that oya, so I want to make sure to just keep doing that all the way around. Not that my beads show very much, but yours might, depending on the color that you're doing. I'm just going for a little extra bit of sparkle. And then just so we're consistent, we're going to come right out that bottom again. Pop on a bead, and then at this point you can just take it all the way to the back, knot it. Looking at these side by side, comparing last week's to this week's, you can see that every little bit that you do makes some sort of impact. So you can decide for yourself, what makes the best impact, what you like, what maybe you'd switch, and make it your own. And of course, as always, do whatever it is that on your mandala that you think looks great. And if you think of something and you're not sure, just try it. It's no big deal to, to take it out and start again. Take a picture of it and look at the screen, and that is the equivalent of looking at it on a design wall. So it's any piece that you're doing, it makes a huge difference looking at it when your nose is right up in it you know, you're not really sure if you like it, the best thing to do is look at it from afar. And the easiest way to do that, of course, is to take a picture of it with your iPhone or your digital camera and look at the screen. And if it's, you know, if whatever detail it is that you're doing makes a big impact and you can see it right away, you're going to like it. So continue on with what you're doing. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to work on the corners of the mandala. So what you're going to want to get ready for next week is the applique templates that you can still find on my website, myhrequilts.com. Anything that says corners. So we're looking at this guy, the corner leaves and the corner tips. Fabric C, E, and G, your rickrack, your original thread, because we are going to do a little bit more background stitching, and then your fusible web, because we're going to do both glue turned applique and raw edge applique. So you'll want that product for those things. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this stitching adventure. It is such a gift to be able to share this time with you. With that, I will leave you with our mandala garden, which we are planting together, and each individual mandala I see as a seed that has been tended lovingly with an expression of individuality. So enjoy.